Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. I'm Daniel Cross, 39, and I build things for a living. Kitchens that fit a family's habits, staircases that don't creak, tables that hold weight and years. Charleston's home, and the little Italian place on Bay Street, is where I proposed 12 years ago with a ring I could barely afford. Tonight we were back there for our anniversary. Same corner booth, same view of the water between the window mullions, same tiramisu set between us like a split decision. I called ahead, asked for the server who knew my wife likes the Barbera and that I always overtip because I remember being young and broke. From the first course, something dragged at the edge of the night. She smiled the way you smile when a camera is on you and you're not ready. She kept glancing over my shoulder toward the bar, then down at her phone at angles that hid the screen from me. I don't make a sport of checking her phone. I build cabinets with soft close hinges so things don't slam. But you don't need a code to read body language. There was a patience in her I recognized from my shop. How a board waits on the sawhorses before you decide which face should show and which will hide against the wall. I tried to land us in ordinary. Asked about her day. Told her the walnut slab I'd been saving for a church podium came out straighter than expected after a week in the clamps. She nodded in the right places, but her eyes never settled. She touched the stem of her glass like it might buzz with a message. When the bread came, she tore it without looking, set the piece on her plate, didn't eat it. Every couple has their private tells. That untouched bread was one of ours. I watched the room the way I do a job site, subtle sounds, the rhythm of work. A bartender shaking ice. The hiss off the espresso machine. The hum of conversation laid over Sinatra, like the whole room agreed on a tempo. My wife was a half beat off. I stayed quiet. People will tell you what they want if you let the silence hold. I learned that measuring crown molding for old houses where nothing is square. Measure twice, cut once, and give the wood room to move. The tiramisu landed between us, dusted with cocoa like snow on a roofline. The server lit a short candle and slipped away without asking if we wanted coffee. He knows I don't drink it at night. My wife leaned forward with the kind of careful tone you use when you've rehearsed the first sentence and you're hoping it opens the door without swinging it into anyone's face. I think we need a little openness. I didn't hear the clink of plates behind me anymore, just the soft tremble of the candle flame and the blood in my ears doing a slow, measured count. It wasn't the first time I'd heard a version of that word in the world. Open kitchens. Open to ideas. Openness sounds generous until you look at the framing and see which walls are load-bearing. Openness, I said, keeping my hands flat on the table. How little? She gave a small shrug that wanted to be casual. Just room to be ourselves without all the rules. It's healthy. Her gaze lifted over my shoulder, then returned like a swallow turning midair. A little openness could be good for us. I set my fork down and felt something steady inside me click into place, like a mortise finding its tenon. There's a difference between flexible and flimsy. Houses fall when you mistake one for the other. I think, I said, we need a little closure. She flinched. If you build with hardwoods long enough, you learn to read micro-movements. Bowing. Cupping. The early signs of peace wants to twist. She looked at the dessert as if the answer might be written in the cocoa. I don't argue with wood or with people who've made up their minds. I listen, and then I cut. Dan, she said, voice softer. You're making this heavier than it needs to be. It's our anniversary, I said. Weight comes with the territory. Her hand hovered over the plate, then pulled back. She tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. Old habit when she's nervous. The room swelled again. The bartender laughing. A couple to our left clinking glasses, someone calling for the check. Normal life sliding past our table like a tide around a piling. She tried again, words moving faster now. This isn't about not loving you. It's about not wanting to feel boxed in. We keep doing the same things, the same dinners, the same expectations. I need space to breathe. We both do. I nodded once. So what you want is less marriage and more options. That's not fair. She said it with the practiced firmness of someone who expects the objection. It's about honesty. About being adults. Adults make agreements and keep them. Adults know which beams can move and which hold the roof. I looked at her and allowed that something in us had been loosening for a while, a nail backing itself out until the board starts to rattle. Maybe we both ignored it. Maybe I'd sanded the noise with more work, longer hours, better wine, another restaurant reservation meant to glue us back together. She checked her phone again. The screen lit her face from below for half a second. Reflex, not thought. Somewhere in me, a pencil point snapped cleanly. Okay, I said. Let me ask a plain question. When you say openness, do you mean other people? Her eyes skittered away, then returned. The tiniest delay. I mean possibilities. Right. I folded my napkin once, a neat rectangle. The candle popped, a wick giving up a blister of air. Possibilities tend to come with names. She drew a breath, held it, let it out. Can we not ruin tonight? Depends what you consider ruined. If you look at lumber long enough, you can tell where the tree stood in a storm year. Tight grain that season, then a sudden widen. Stress recorded in rings. I could feel a ring forming in me, a line I'd remember. Calm isn't emptiness. It's choosing not to waste movement. I was calm. She reached for her wine, then set it back down. I watched her face search for a gentler doorway than the one she'd already opened. I wasn't going to build it for her. That's when a voice I didn't recognize cut in from my right. Low and ordinary, nothing dramatic, except for the words. Did you already tell him? Not the waiter. A man's hand rested on the high back of our booth like it belonged there. I turned and took in the fitted suit, the gym shoulders pressed too tight under navy wool, the kind of smile people practice in bathroom mirrors. He looked at her first, then at me. My wife stiffened, the way a board stiffens when a planer hits a knot. She said his name like a reflex, quiet, like maybe if she kept it small it would stay small. Josh. He rested his knuckles on the back of the booth like it was a claim stake. Up close he looked younger than the suit wanted him to be. Clean jawline, office tan, the faint shine of someone who thinks confidence is a product you can apply. He glanced at her again, then at me, measuring. I kept my voice level. Tell me what, exactly? He shifted, heel to heel. About the new arrangement. She drew in a breath. Not here. It's our anniversary, I said. If there's an arrangement that involves me, here is exactly right. Her fingers went to the base of her throat, then dropped. You're twisting this. I looked at him. Did you ask her if she'd already told her husband? Because walking up to our table sounds like you assumed she had. A beat. He didn't answer. The room carried on. The espresso hissed. A fork chimed on china. Sinatra crooned about luck being a lady. At our table, the lady stared at the tiramisu like it might offer a script. Josh pulled back his hand and stood straighter. Maybe I should give you two a moment. Maybe you should, I said, but you didn't. He took half a step away and stopped, like a man who suddenly realizes the floor plan doesn't match the blueprint. She looked at him, looked at me, then set her palms flat on the table. This is exactly why I wanted openness, she said. Your tone, the interrogation. You control every conversation until I run out of air. I kept my hands visible and still. I asked one question. You brought a witness. She shook her head, hair slipping forward and catching light. I needed support. With you, everything is rules. You schedule, you budget, you turn feelings into tasks. I'm a person, not a project plan. Projects finish, I said. People commit. Which one are we? There it was, the little flash of anger that warms a face from the inside. Josh shifted again, like he'd stumbled into a family argument and discovered it was a courtroom. He tried on a soft voice. We can come back another time. She leaned in. This is what I mean, you shut doors. You make everything final because it's easier than examining yourself. I looked at her and let the seconds count out. Have you started something already? Her mouth moved before words did. This isn't about that. It is exactly about that. I'm not a cheater. I didn't call you one. I asked if there's someone else in your mind when you say openness. She cut a glance toward him, quick and guilty as a reflex. He studied the wine rack 2 tables over like it held answers. The server hovered at the edge of vision with a practiced smile that meant I'm here if you need an exit. The candle bent and righted itself in the draft. Small things registered because the big thing had already announced itself. She spoke fast now, words tripping over each other. I want to feel alive. I want to be seen. With you it's the shop, the sawdust, the routine, the same restaurants, the same jokes about soft close hinges. You're a good man, Dan, but you're predictable. He makes me feel heard. Then go where you feel big. That stopped her. The sentence seemed to hit the table, find its balance, and stand up between us. People think choices happen with shouting. Sometimes they happen in the space after 5 calm words. You're impossible, she said, voice thinning. You don't bend. You never bend. I smiled without teeth. I bend wood for a living. It's different from letting it snap. Josh cleared his throat. Look, this was probably the wrong night. Probably, I said. Yet here you are. He squared up like he wanted to look brave for her. If you're going to attack me. No attack, I said. You asked if she'd told me. Now you know. She pushed the dessert plate a fraction, leaving a bright half moon where the cocoa used to be. The tiny smear looked like a diagram, something cut away to expose the inside. Maybe that's what tonight was, a cross-section of a house I thought I knew. She straightened, anger settling into resolve. I'm done negotiating my freedom. I need space. I need to breathe. If you can't handle that, then maybe this isn't working. The server approached with the check already tucked in its black folder, reading the room like a pro. He set it down with a nod that carried both apology and efficiency. I slid my card in without looking at the amount. I'd planned to linger over coffee I wouldn't drink and memories we wouldn't remake. Plans change. She watched me sign. That's it. No apology for your tone. No self-reflection. I tapped the pen twice, set it aside. I reflected. 10 years worth. The results are in. You make everything transactional. You brought a contractor to redesign our marriage and asked if we could keep the house. This is the most honest transaction we've had. She picked up her napkin, twisted it once, and dropped it like a flag. People at the neighboring table pretended to study their menus. Josh exhaled through his nose and adjusted his cufflinks, a gesture that said he was trying on the role of rescuer and wasn't sure it fit. She stood. I'm leaving. We can talk when you're ready to be reasonable. I remained seated. I am reasonable. I just don't confuse boundaries with cruelty. She glanced at Josh. Are you coming? He nodded. Eyes not quite meeting mine. The way a man avoids looking at the beam he knows isn't plumb. He stepped back to let her slide out. The candle flickered as she passed, shedding a tiny curl of smoke that smelled like burned sugar. She kept her chin high the way people do when they're walking a narrow plank and want you to think it's a parade route. They moved toward the door together, close but not touching, the careful distance of an arrangement in beta. I watched them cross the tile, watched the hostess say goodnight with a smile that belonged to her job and not to them, watched the door hush shut behind them like a lid settling on something hot. 10 minutes earlier, she'd been my wife across a shared dessert. 10 minutes later, she was a woman walking into the wind beside a man who'd asked a question meant for me. The server returned to refill a glass that didn't need it. Do you want anything else? No, thanks. He took the folder, left the candle, and disappeared with the grace that comes from years of seeing people at their worst and keeping it private. I sat another minute and listened to the room find its rhythm again. Somewhere behind the pass, a pan hit flame and hissed alive. Work continued. I stood, slipped my jacket on, and buttoned it because buttons are promises too. As I stepped away, I looked at the clean rectangle my plate had left on the tablecloth and thought about outlines, about how you think you know the shape of a thing until a hand moves it, and you see what's been hidden under the lip. Outside, the wind off the water pressed cool fingers through my shirt. I put my hands in my pockets and walked to the truck without hurrying. I didn't look back at the window to see if anyone was watching. The pressure had built, and I understood what it was now. Not a storm, just a front moving through, clearing the air for whatever comes after a load-bearing wall is marked in chalk, and the saw finally meets it. I drove home with the windows down and let the bay air clear whatever smoke was still in me. The house met me with the same quiet it always does after dark. Keys in the dish, the slightest thud in the ductwork, the refrigerator's low hum. I stood in the doorway to the kitchen a long minute, not to brood, just to take inventory. Nothing had exploded. A load-bearing wall had been marked in chalk. Now it was time to cut clean. I pulled a legal pad from the drawer, wrote "Access" at the top, and began listing every place my name paid for her comfort. Cards, subscriptions, cloud logins, the fuel app on her phone, airline miles attached to my business card. Passwords had their own page. I've always kept tidy books. The business can't survive on feelings. By the time the clock slid past midnight, I'd queued 2-factor resets, revoked old tokens, switched recovery emails, and shut off autofill on 3 browsers. Sleep came shallow and even. At 5, I was up. The shop opens at 7, but I wanted the bank first. I shaved, put on a clean button-down, and drove to a branch where the manager knows me by the cabinets I built for her husband's dental office. She asked how I was in the careful way a person asks when they see a man arrive 5 minutes before the doors unlock. I told her I needed to remove an authorized user, add dual signature requirements to joint withdrawals, and close a dormant card entirely. She nodded like a carpenter hearing sagging header, and we got to it. There was paperwork. There always is. I initialed boxes, signed where they put tabs, listened to the script about notices and 30-day windows. My personal card lost one name. The savings account gained an extra lock. A new checking account spun to life, solo, quiet, with a new number I could memorize by lunch. I moved my direct deposits and set alerts that would ping me if anything larger than groceries tried to leave a place it shouldn't. By 9, I was at the shop. The men clocked in, boots loud on the concrete, faces open in the way of people ready to work. I gave them the day's cut list and stepped into the office to handle the business side: merchant accounts, payroll platform, vendor portals. I wasn't freezing the company. I was rerouting its arteries so no one else could put their hands on them. 10 years ago, I'd have tried to talk my way into clarity. These days, I prefer clean lines. Her first text landed mid-morning. "You changed the card?" I typed. "I removed an authorized user. My account's my choice." "Overreacting. We should talk. I'm available through counsel when I have counsel. For now, boundaries." A call came right after. I let the screen brighten and go dark. Then another. Then a third. The kind of rapid dial people use when they think noise is leverage. I set the phone face down and reviewed a bid for a church refectory table. Maple, pegged through tenons. The kind of work that outlives the memory of who ordered it. At lunch, I drove home and packed. Not to throw her out. She'd already walked. But to get the chaos out of my house before it took root. I pulled empty wardrobe boxes from the garage loft, unfolded each one with the same care I give to full extension slides, and labeled them with a carpenter's pencil: work dresses, casual tops, bathroom, sentimental. I folded what needed folding, sheathed hanging clothes in plastic to keep dust off, wrapped perfumes so they wouldn't rattle, and stacked the boxes in a neat wall along the garage, far from the door in case she wanted to pick them up when I wasn't there. I put her passport and birth certificate in an envelope taped to the inside of the wardrobe box, top right corner, exactly where a person would look if they were thinking clearly. The bedroom looked wider when I finished. The dent her suitcase left in the quilt the night before had eased out. I stripped the bed and washed the sheets like any other Saturday, even though it wasn't Saturday. Clean is clean regardless of the calendar. On the way back to the shop, I stopped by the cell carrier. I stopped paying for upgrades and removed my card from autopay. She can keep her number. She can fund her own convenience. At the hardware store, I grabbed a new keypad for the shop side door. Employees have keys, but the code was the one we used when she'd swing by with coffee on a slow afternoon. The afternoon after your wife leaves with another man is a good time to change a code. My foreman, Luis, poked his head in around 3. "You good, boss?" "I'm making a few adjustments," I said. He nodded, not prying, and handed me a list of lengths we were short for the stair job. Work asks small, solvable questions. That's one of the reasons I chose it. By evening, the practical pieces were in place. Utilities linked to my new account. The streaming services asked her to log in again and met her with a generic screen instead of a cue tuned to her tastes. The grocery delivery app no longer recognized her address as mine. I boiled pasta, ate standing up over the sink, then took out the trash because it was Tuesday and because the trash goes out on Tuesdays whether you're married or not. The second text came late. "You can't just cut me off." I typed. "You made your choice. I'm making mine." 3 dots pulsed and disappeared. Then, "This is cruel." I set the phone down. Cruel is pretending to negotiate openness while you're already halfway into someone else's condo. Boundaries get called cruel by people who benefited from the lack of them. I brushed my teeth, turned off the lamp, and slept in the guest room because the sheets there smelled like lemon oil from the dresser I finished last month, not like the cologne of a man who had leaned too close to our table. Day 2 began like day 1. Early, quiet, with the kind of weather Charleston gives you to make you forget the storm seasons. In the inbox, 3 invoices had cleared. In the mail, a postcard from a client's kid who loved the bunk bed I built with the ladder hidden in the bookcase. Real things continue. I called 3 attorneys, one recommended by my accountant, one by a client who went through a clean divorce last year, one I found by reading success pages for an hour and ignoring the firms that brag about aggressive. I don't need aggressive. I need precise. Around noon, a buddy sent me a photo he didn't know I didn't need. Her, on a balcony I recognized from a complex 2 neighborhoods over, glass in hand, the corner of a man's shoulder in frame. "Sorry, man," he wrote. I told him not to be, thanked him for thinking of me, and asked about his kid's little league game. There are only so many nails in a board before it splits. No need to add more. I kept moving. Insurance beneficiaries updated. The spare key under the terracotta frog retrieved and moved to a lockbox in the shop that only I open. My mom's ring, which lived in a drawer, went to the small safe with the title to my truck and a stack of cash for emergencies. In the yard, I coiled the hose and hung it on the hook I'd made last summer. It stopped looking like a snake that had forgotten itself and started looking like a tool put away. Late afternoon, she called again. I answered because silence shouldn't become a superstition. "You're unbelievable," she began. "People separate every day without being petty." "Then let's separate like adults," I said. "Return the house key by Friday. Your boxes are in the garage. Tell me when you want to pick them up. I'll be elsewhere. We can route conversation through counsel from here." "You're going to get a lawyer?" "Yes. So am I good? You think this makes you strong? You think cutting me off makes you the bigger person? I think it makes me the responsible one. I won't fund an experiment I didn't sign up for." She exhaled into the receiver for a long time, as if she could fog the line and write a different story in it with her finger. Then she hung up without a goodbye. I stood in the quiet and watched dust hang in a diagonal of light and then disappear when the air moved. 2 days after the restaurant, mutual friends started doing what mutual friends do, mistaking proximity for obligation. Texts arrived packaged in concern and gossip ribbon. "Have you heard? She's staying at his place for now. Maybe give it a week. She's emotional. If you want to talk." I thanked them, told them I was fine, and meant it. You don't sand against the grain forever. At some point you turn the board. What mattered now wasn't where she slept or what he posted. What mattered were the straight edges, money clean, accounts secured, property accounted for, my mind quiet enough to hear my own decisions. I made a simple dinner again. Ate at the workbench in the shop with a blueprint unrolled beside my plate and a pencil tucked above my ear, then rinsed the dish and set it upside down to dry. Tomorrow I'd meet with an attorney, put terms into language, and then let paper carry the weight paper is designed to carry. She chose a little openness. I chose a little order. A man deciding where his lines go and drawing them with a sharp pencil so there's no mistaking the cut to come. The morning after the calls, Charleston woke up warm and bright like it hadn't heard a word we said. I made eggs, answered a vendor email, and drove to the attorney whose name my accountant swears by. Her office smelled like lemon cleaner and copy toner. She asked for facts, dates, and account lists. I slid a folder across her desk with tabs for each item. People think carpenters only deal in wood. The truth is, we deal in order. She glanced through the documents, nodded, and started drawing the outline of a separation agreement that would leave feelings outside and bring numbers inside where they belong. While she typed, my phone vibrated face down. I let it. I signed a retainer, set a follow-up for Friday, and walked out with a list as crisp as a new blade. Proposed temporary support at the statutory minimum, possession of the house, pending division, inventory of personal property, done, and a note to keep communication in writing. My handwriting is easy to read. That helps more than people think. By noon, the social weather shifted. Mutual friends, some real, some just people who know our anniversaries from photos, started transmitting. A screenshot of her Instagram story, wine on a small balcony I recognized, caption about new chapters and breathing. A group text without me in it, forwarded anyway, asking if anyone had a truck to help her move a dresser until things settle. A close friend wrote, "You okay to talk?" I told him I was good and meant it. I don't need an audience to keep a spine straight. She tried again that evening, first with a text that started soft and ended sharp. I was confused. I reacted emotionally. "You've always been so rigid, and I needed to feel alive. We can course correct if you stop punishing me." I read it twice, the way I'd read a plan that lists wrong dimensions cleanly but confidently. Then I archived it. You don't argue with bad measurements. You start a new sheet. Bills introduced themselves to her next. The grocery app pinged me a failed charge that used to run on my card. Then an email from the spa we used to visit twice a year, reminding MS. Cross, that a card on file had declined and asking for an update. I didn't forward anything. She knows where I live. She knows where she doesn't. 2 days later, she showed up for her boxes during work hours like I'd asked, but early enough to catch me between deliveries. She stood at the garage door in sunglasses and a loose sweater you could hide a decision under. Josh waited in the driver's seat of a silver car I'd seen around town, but never from this angle. He studied the dashboard like it owed him money. "I thought you wouldn't be here," she said. "I'm leaving in 5, I answered. "Everything's labeled." She looked past me at the neat wall of cardboard and garment bags, at the wardrobe box with the passport envelope taped inside. "You packed my things." "I packed the house," I said. "Your things are part of it." "That's cruel." "It's organized." Her mouth tightened. "You used to be kinder. I used to be married." She signed the pickup receipt without reading it, the way we learn to sign for packages we order at midnight and regret in daylight. Josh popped the trunk and didn't look at me. That told me everything I needed to know about how their openness worked in sunlight. The week taught lessons without speeches. She learned the rent on a condo looks different when it doesn't filter through my accounts first. She learned that our friends will hug you privately, but won't host you publicly when you arrive with a complication on your arm. 2 couples canceled group dinners rather than pick a side. A third invited me to fish and didn't mention her at all. Neutral is a vote too. She sent a longer message on Thursday, professional in tone like a cover letter. She wrote that she didn't mean to humiliate me at dinner, that her openness comment was poorly timed, that this relationship pivot didn't have to mean the end of us. She said she wanted to visit the house to discuss logistics. I replied once, "Counsel will send terms. Please route all non-urgent matters through counsel." The words fit in one screen, which is the right size for clarity. My attorney moved faster than I expected, or maybe I've been moving slow for years. By Friday afternoon, she drafted a proposal that split what law says to split, drew lines around the tools and the truck, pre-marriage, separate, listed the house for me pending refinance, and set out the smallest temporary support the statute allows until equitable division. We added a clause about non-disparagement, no weaponizing friends, no confessional posts with names. She sent it to the other side. Saturday looked like Saturday. Oil change, shop sweep, a quick tune on the bandsaw to stop a wandering cut. After lunch, I ran a new bead of caulk along the tub because water finds weakness and isn't sentimental about it. The phone stayed mostly quiet. Late evening, her attorney emailed a counter that sounded like it was written by someone who hadn't met me. Big claims, bigger adjectives, a request for interim lifestyle maintenance that would have funded 2 lifestyles. My attorney sent back exhibits, bank statements, calendars, credit limits, a photo log of the day I boxed the house. She CC'd me. I drank water, read line by line, and slept like a man who knows which studs are on 16-inch centers. In the middle of all that, life kept making its small demands. Mrs. Ellison called to say the pantry doors I built last spring still make her smile when they click shut. Louise texted a picture of a perfect glue line on a curved lamination. I went for a run along the Battery and felt my lungs pull clean air all the way to bottom. People talk about closure like it's a ceremony. Sometimes it's just the absence of a tremor in the hand that holds the pencil. Her circle shifted by the second week. One of her closest friends, someone who'd been loudest about freedom for months, sent me a DM that said, "I don't agree with how she did it. You deserved better." I don't need endorsements from the gallery. Another friend asked if I'd be comfortable at a mutual birthday dinner, if the guest list includes everyone. I thanked her and passed. There were quiet attempts at seduction too, the kind that don't admit they're trying. A selfie from the balcony light, captioned, "Thinking." A memory from our trip to Asheville, resurfaced with a sigh emoji. When the negotiation finally narrowed to dollars, she signed faster than I expected. Maybe her new openness costs more than the brochure promised. Maybe her attorney explained what a court would do. Maybe she's just tired. My attorney emailed me a PDF with her signature and a date stamp. I printed one copy, hole-punched it, and slid it into a binder behind a tab marked agreements. That's where paper goes when it has a job to do. If anyone noticed a change in me, they didn't say so out loud. I showed up to work, put my weight behind straight cuts, kept promises. I slept in the guest room by choice now, because the layout suits the life I'm living. The master bedroom can wait until the house knows itself again. Houses remember. You don't rush that. She hasn't stopped existing. I still see her car sometimes on Meeting Street, still catch the tilt of a laugh that used to be mine from a block away. Josh is sometimes with her, sometimes not. That's not my data anymore. What I do track is simpler. Money in, money out, hours worked, miles run, whether I said what I meant and did what I said. Guilt isn't a tool in my belt. Neither is vengeance. Both dull quickly and ruin the cut. By the end of the month, the air had cleared to the point I could hear a new sound in the shop. Possibility, not the reckless kind she sold me at dessert, but the kind that comes from seeing plainly. That's when a notice caught my eye on the legal classifieds page I scan out of habit. The same way you scan lumber for knots even when you trust the mill. It mentioned an auction, collateral seized from an LLC with a familiar name, a list of equipment I could expand a kitchen with. I clipped the listing, folded it into my pocket, and went back to work without changing my face. Her game didn't end. It just stopped working on me. She tried guilt, then charm, then blame, then nostalgia. I remained somewhere she couldn't reach, not out of spite, but out of respect for the man who builds things that last. Some people pay attention when you speak softly. Others only understand a door they can't open. I wasn't locked. I was closed. And I had one more thing to do before I put the drawer back and call the project finished. The legal notice I clipped from the classifieds turned into an address on a frontage road, a gray cinder block warehouse with a roll-up door and a folding table for sign-in. Collateral sale, UCC, cash, or verified funds only. The sheet on the clipboard listed an LLC I recognized from her balcony posts and a stack of stainless I could almost see through the paper. Double-stack convection, 6-burner with salamander, tilt skillet, reach-ins, prep tables. I was looking at numbers that added up and steel that could be put back to work. Inside, the lots were chalk-numbered and dusty, cords zip-tied like hands. A few bidders I knew from the trade stood with coffee and catalog pages. The secured parties rep read the rules slow, as if anyone in the room needed an education in consequences. I kept my hands in my pockets and listened. When the auctioneer started in on the kitchen line, the price climbed in neat steps, then faltered. Restaurants bleed when timing goes bad. I let one bid die in the air and raised my card once. Sold. The word was simple and satisfying in a way no speech could be. At the bank, a cashier's check took 6 minutes to print. By noon, my guys had the equipment on our trailer, straps crossed, corners padded. Back at the shop, we wiped everything down with stainless cleaner and method, pulled panels to check for heat warping, replaced 2 gaskets, rewired a cracked plug. I ordered a sleeve of aluminum asset tags with the name of a small holding company I use for rentals, Cross Custom Holdings, and stuck them where grease doesn't go. Nothing dramatic, no stamping letters like a cattle brand. Just tidy labels and a ledger that would start to speak in monthly rent. The restaurant from our anniversary had been talking about upgrading for years, but couldn't stomach the capital outlay. I called the owner, an honest man with a talent for garlic and payroll, and told him I could outfit his line on a lease that didn't require him to sell his future. We walked the kitchen that afternoon. He ran his hand over the tilt skillet like it might purr. We shook on a number and let the lawyers reduce a handshake into clauses. The gear rolled in on a Wednesday. By Friday night service, the pass glowed like new money. A week later, the place hosted a community benefit. The same room where our marriage admitted its new shape. Sponsor board by the door, names printed in clean fonts. My holding company tucked between a wine distributor and a roofing outfit. I wore a jacket, combed the sawdust out of my hair, and sat where I could see the kitchen pass without taking up more space than my ticket earned. People clapped for causes. The chef came out, red-cheeked and grateful, and thanked donors by category. A special nod to Cross Custom Holdings for making our kitchen upgrade possible after a previous buyer couldn't perform. No names, just a sentence that fit in the room. I ate the chicken I didn't come for and watched the line hum. New flame, even heat, a cook moving pans with a confidence that only good tools give. The asset tags caught the light when a fridge door swung. Little squares, little proofs. I felt nothing like triumph, more like alignment. Materials moved from where they were wasting into work. Halfway through dessert service, the door opened and she appeared with him. Not on my account. It was a benefit. The city is small. Her hair was different, straighter, the kind of change people try on when they want to put distance between today and last month. He wore the same suit cut, a color that photographs well. They scanned the room and saw what I wanted them to see. Not me first, but the plaque by the kitchen, brass, 2 screws, small enough to be tasteful, large enough to be legible. Kitchen upgrade supported by cross-custom holdings. Her eyes landed on the sponsor board next, skated down, stopped, and then lifted to the pass again, where a prep table wore one of my tags like a dog has a collar. We looked at each other across a room full of clatter. No scowl. Just the recognition you have when a blueprint becomes a wall and you understand that the space is never going back to what it was. He followed her gaze, found the plaque, then the tag on a reach-in, and recalculated the angles in his head. I could see it the way I see a bowed board before a stranger can. A small shift, a new understanding of load. The owner brought a receipt to my table. First month's lease, initialed and tidy. He apologized for interrupting, thanked me again, and left a pen on the folder with a care that felt like respect. I signed, tore my copy, and slid it into my inside pocket with the ease of a man putting away a square. She watched the move, hands folded tight, like she was holding her breath where I couldn't hear it. No one made a scene. They sat at the far wall, ordered wine that wasn't mine, and positioned their bodies like people who don't want to touch the open flame of a stove that's new to them. There's a dignity in finishing a cut in one pass. People love a story where the other man runs or the other woman begs. That's theater. What I wanted was arithmetic. She asked for a little openness. I found a little ownership. A lender enforced its security interest. I answered a notice like any citizen can. A kitchen got better. A balance sheet found center. You could try to dress it in romance. It wouldn't fit. After the thank yous, I stood, shook hands I owed, and stepped into the night. Charleston hummed, the air salt-soft and familiar. I walked past their table because the exit was there, not for effect. She kept her chin high. He examined crumbs. At the door, the hostess smiled and said good night in the way professionals do when they've seen everything and keep it to themselves. I pushed into the street and didn't look back at the window. You don't re-inspect a seam you know you glued right. At home, I hung the jacket, took the receipt from my pocket, and filed it behind the tab labeled leases. Paper in its place. The house felt solid, the way a frame does after the last nail seats and the bounce leaves the floor. I poured water, flipped off lights, and stood in the doorway to the master bedroom. I could go back to that bed now. The guest room had done its job. Maybe tomorrow I'd change sheets and move my books. Maybe I'd leave it a few more days and let the wood settle. This feel like a ledger closing. Respect isn't a prize you talk someone into handing over. It's a boundary you draw and defend without raising your voice. She will make her choices. He will make his. I'm not their accountant anymore. My job is smaller and heavier. Build work that lasts. Keep promises I write in ink, and never again confuse flexibility with surrender. She called it a little openness over dessert. I called it a little closure. Tonight, the kitchen ran hot on equipment I own, and I went to bed early in a house that finally sounded like itself.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.